In this video, we're going to talk about building ads. I'm going to show you a little walkthrough on exactly how to build them and get you to the point where you can run ads as quick as possible. Now, you're going to remember in the first video, we were talking about 3 key principles. So what I want to do is I want to dive straight in and start showing you how to build one based on everything that we've thought about so far. So if you go to business.facebook.com and you go up to this little navigation tab here, you're going to be able to open up your ads manager. And as we've seen before, we're going to see the campaigns that are currently running and we're going to see the analytics of all the results of what that campaign's generating. Now, if we want to go ahead and make a new ad, the first thing we want to do is hit this big button that says create. And we want to choose our campaign objective. Now, we're going to dive into all the different campaign objectives later in the series, and we're also going to be talking about the deeper strategies of how, when, and why to use these. But for this lesson, I'm just going to focus on the process of making an ad, because once you choose an objective, aside from a few really minor details, the process is exactly the same. So just for an example, let's make a campaign that is going to be driving someone to a website. And as you know, if we want to drive someone to a website off the platform that we're advertising in, we want to use something called a traffic campaign. So if I go here and click on traffic, it's going to ask me to name the campaign. So let's call this test. And it's also going to ask me 2 important questions. Firstly, do I want to create an A/B test? A/B test is quite simply if you're trying to choose between, say, a number of different audiences, or if we're trying to choose between a number of different adverts to see which one would perform the best. An A/B test is how we do that. It allows us to test different ways of doing the same thing to find out which one is the most effective for the objective that we've set. The second thing it's going to ask us about is whether or not we want campaign budget optimization on. Now, all that means is it's saying, how do you want to split your budget between different audiences? Now, of course, you can do that manually. For example, let's say that you are marketing a product in both the United Kingdom and America. Now, just for argument's sake, let's say there's 9 times as many people in America as there are in England, i.e. in England, there's 1 person for every 9 in America. Now, it might make sense to you that if you're going to spend £10 of budget, you might want £1 going to the UK and £9 going to America. So if you wanted to spread out your budget relatively, depending on the number of people in each different audience, this would be how you do it. Now, the important thing to realize about campaign budget optimization is that's exactly how it would work if your campaign was optimized for reach, if you were just trying to reach as many people as possible. But I want to explain that the budget optimization is actually going to put the most amount of budget in the ad set that is performing the best, depending on what your campaign objective is. So just to go a little step further, let's say that we are doing a conversion campaign. Now, for every 1 person in England, there's 9 people in America, but it just so happens with this product, we're selling a lot more in the UK than in America. The campaign budget optimization in this scenario would be putting more budget into the best performing ad set, i.e. the UK, even though it's smaller. So campaign budget optimization is going to put the most money into the most effective ad set when you're considering the objective of that campaign. So if we leave this off just for the moment, that's going to mean that we're going to set the budget within the ad set. So just one more time to go through that. If campaign budget optimization is off, we're going to need to manually put in how much money we want to spend on every individual ad set. If the campaign budget optimization is on, Facebook is going to start distributing the budget evenly across the different ad sets, and it's going to put more and more money into that ad set that's working the best as it's learning. Now we go into the process of making an ad set, which can really be thought of as making an audience and then deciding where we want to place the advert and how much budget is going to be associated to it. So a little tip here is I would always name your ad set after you've made it. And the reason why is because when you go through the process of making an ad set, of making an audience, usually you're going to have ideas or you're going to have concepts or strategies that you might think of as you're building it. And you'll see a lot more about this later in the series. Sometimes it's useful to name the ad set at the end because then you can include ideas that you've had along the way. Moving down to traffic, we have some different optimizations here. So we're going to be sending people to a website in this example, but we could just as easily be sending people to an app, We could be sending people to message our Facebook page or even asking people to WhatsApp us. So the reasons why are exactly the same as other optimizations. For example, not everybody uses WhatsApp. And if you were to line up everybody on a scale from most likely to WhatsApp you to least likely to WhatsApp you, this optimization here is going to choose people who are going to be most likely to WhatsApp you. It's going to put your advert in front of those people first. Similarly, it's the same for Messenger and for apps, and it's exactly the same for the website. If you are involved with apps, you can just put your app ID or you can put your app name in here. The Messenger will be sending people to message your Facebook business profile. So let's just use website for now. And as we scroll down, we have a little toggle here that asks us whether we want to have dynamic creative on or off. Dynamic creative is something you want to use if you're not sure what combination of text, content, and links are going to give you the best result. That's going to allow you to say, well, okay, if I had 5 different ways of writing this copy and 5 different images that do the same thing, and you wanted to test 5 different call to action buttons to see which one would generate the most clicks, you're going to let Facebook chop and change, mix and match them and put them in different orientations, and it's going to come back and tell you what the most effective combination of those different puzzle pieces are. It's a really effective tool if you want to figure out the best way of combining these different parts of your message to get the best result. Next up is about creating an offer for your ad. Now, there's ways in Facebook where you can create an offer that shows in a newsfeed. It allows people to share it and save it and use it at your business. This is grayed out because of the way this ad set is optimized. I want to scoot past that now because it's not vitally important in the lesson on how to create ads. So let's just move on swiftly to audience. Audience is where you're going to decide who you want to target with your advert. So here we can put custom audiences. Now, custom audiences are audiences that you have created. So let's say, for example, you wanted to put this advert in front of people that have engaged with your Facebook page in the last year. This is where you find those audiences. But if you're new to Business Manager, you're not going to see any audiences in that dropdown. And the reason why is because we have to create them first. We're going to talk about creating audiences in a lesson devoted to audiences, but now you understand where the custom audiences can be populated. As we move down to locations, quite simply, we can put any location we want and we can draw a little circle around that particular area. Now, by default, we can bring this little circle down to 17 kilometers or as wide as 80 kilometers. And we can do that essentially anywhere in the world. The thing to draw your attention to when you're choosing a location to target is you also have a drop down here where you can decide to choose people who just live in that location, which means that their device has been registered at being there pretty statically. We might want to choose people who have recently been in the location, or maybe people who are traveling in that location. They definitely don't live there, but they're there currently. There's lots of reasons why you would want to choose these different optimizations. We're going to talk more about that in the lesson devoted to strategy, but now you know where to find that option within the Ads Manager. You can choose the age range of the target audience, you can choose the gender, you can choose what language they speak, and you can go down to start using something called detailed targeting. Similar to with the location, there's lots to talk about with this area, and we're going to talk about that more in the lesson on strategy, but this is where you can find the different interest of different users. Now, as we choose different interests and we choose different locations and different age ranges, you're going to notice that on the right-hand side, we have an approximation to how big this audience is. So right now, if I decide to choose an age range of 18 to 45 of English speakers around 80 kilometers radius around London, I know that there's around about 3.4 million people in this area currently who have shown an interest in dogs. And I also know that based on the budget that I have set, each day, I can be expected to reach somewhere between 1.6 and 4.8 thousand people, and I can expect to achieve somewhere between 35 and 102 landing page views. Now, these results obviously vary quite a bit. It depends on the data that Facebook has on your marketing already. It might get more accurate. It also depends on comparing what you're trying to do to many of the other marketers in the area or doing the same thing. That's how these assumptions are made. And it can be really useful to give you a rough guide of how your ad might run. Now, bear in mind, don't take these as gospel because it really depends on the advert and it depends on how well that advert connects with the target audience. So you have a little button here which asks you if you want to reach people beyond your detailed targeting selections when it's likely to improve performance. Now, let's say, for example, your objective is video views and you are trying to sell your dog food. Just because certain people have shown an interest in dogs doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't more people out there that might want to watch your video. So clicking this button is going to drastically increase your audience size, as you've just seen it raise here from 3.4 million. And that's basically going to expand the potential audience to try and get you more results based on what you've set as an objective. Now, the connections here is where you can market to people that have made a specific action on your page. For example, if I wanted to market to only people who like my Facebook business page, this is where I can do it. I can choose to market to the people who are friends of the people who like my page, or I might want to exclude people who like my page. And you might want to do this for introductory content because you don't necessarily want to put your introductory content in front of people who are already well aware of who you are. This is the same for people who have been tracked using your apps or friends of people who have done that. This could be really useful, for example, if you are trying to sell tickets to an event and you want to market to all of the people that have said they're interested or have responded to as attending on that particular event. So if you want to, you can save an audience, and this would mean that you wouldn't need to rebuild that same audience again. You can save an audience and name it anything you like, and what you'll find is when you do save an audience, you will be able to populate it by clicking here and using a saved audience instead of creating a new one. So that's just a really handy way to avoid the process of making a similar audience again and again and again. You can just save it and load it on the next one. You'll remember from the video on 3 key principles that when we talk about the audience, we also want to think about where the ad is going to show to that audience. Now, adverts can sit as posts in a Facebook feed, or they might turn up on your Instagram stories, or they might even show up in apps that people are using. They might even show up in articles on other websites. This all comes down to the placements, and if you want Facebook to deduce where your ad is going to perform best, leave automatic placements turned on. My advice would be to make different ad sets with different placements so you can actually test and you can see how different placements are reacting with your audience. If you choose manual placements, you can choose whether you want to target people who are using mobile or desktop devices. You can go and decide which platforms you want to choose. Do you want to show this on Instagram, on Facebook? Do you want to only show this in Messenger? Would you like to show this in Audience Network? And Audience Network is all about surrounding websites and surrounding apps that allow Facebook to have marketers put their message within their apps. So, for example, if you're on the New York Metro, there's millions and millions of people who use the New York Metro app, and that app allows people to market within it. So if you want to place your advert into those apps, this is where you're going to do it. So you can go and see all the different placements here, and as you hover over them, you're going to get a little example of what that advert would look like. So you can choose the placements that you would like your message to be seen in. And then if you click this little drop down here, you can even choose whether you want this to only show on Apple devices or Android devices. And also you can choose whether you want to show this advert only to people connected to Wi-Fi, which could be handy if you're running quite a long video ad. You might not want to show that to people on a 3G network, for example, but that is completely up to you. And we're going to talk more about the strategy of how and why to use these things in later lessons, but I just want to show you the mechanics of how you can actually go and build an ad and what options are available to you. It's not vital right now that we talk about content publishers and live streaming, so I'm going to swing straight through to budget and schedule. Now, this is where we can optimize for the type of delivery we want from our advert. I would suggest that as we're using a traffic campaign example, we want to optimize for the default, which is landing page views. Now, what this means is you want to optimize this to people who are likely to click your link and actually load your page. You're not simply saying, I want as many people to click this link as possible. And similarly, there are some other options that are worth going through. For example, if you would like to optimize for impressions, this is just going to put your ad out there to as many devices as many times as possible. And that might mean that someone will see your ad many, many times and potentially click through many, many times. You might actually decide that that's not what you want for your strategy. You might decide, well, I don't want people seeing my ad loads of times. I don't want people to be prompted to go to my website frequently. Maybe you want to reach as many unique people as possible, which is very different to serving the most amount of impressions. You do have a different optimization here, which is going to deliver your ad to people up to once a day, and it's going to try and reach as many unique users as possible. I don't recommend that we get involved with cost controls and bid strategies, because that's essentially about putting in manual restrictions on how those ads are going to serve. Facebook's pretty good with its algorithms of learning how best to serve adverts once you've given it an objective. So for the moment, you want to leave this open and you don't want to put your own manual restrictions in. You want Facebook to serve those ads as best it can using its own optimizations. So we're going to skip past this now and we're going to look at budget. We have two different options when it comes to the budget, and this is really up to you. Do you want to set a budget for a particular amount of time? For example, would you like to spend £50 in a month? Or would you like to spend a daily budget and decide to change that up and down as you go and as you see results? So quite simply, if I put a daily budget of £5, it's going to spend £5 a day trying to achieve the objective that I've set. If I go ahead to lifetime budget, and do beware, whenever you change to lifetime budget, for some reason, there's a little bit of a glitch that just expands your daily budget across the month. But you can choose a lifetime budget and decide to, I don't know, spend £50 between today and a month's time or 2 months' time or a year's time. It doesn't really matter. Do bear in mind, though, that the minimum spend is £1 a day. So if you're going to run something for 30 days, the minimum lifetime budget will be £30. So I hope that makes sense. One thing that's worth noting is this little thing down here, ad scheduling. It is possible to run ads on a daily schedule. You might want your ad only running between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That is only available when it comes to a lifetime budget. You can click run ads on a schedule, and this is where we can start to choose the exact hours of exact days that we might want our advert to run. So that's a handy little thing to know. But I'm just going to leave this on daily budget for now. Bring this back down to £5. Now, if I have a daily budget, I can choose to end my campaign in a month or 2 months' time. This is going to spend £5 a day up until that end date. Now, I might choose to not schedule an end date and just say, look, I want that ad running forever until I choose to say stop. So however you want to do it, it's up to you. I'd recommend putting a stop date in, because the last thing you want to do is build an ad and forget about it and find out that you've been billed a fortune in a month and maybe your costs have gone through the roof because you weren't concentrating. My advice here is use an end date and try to use lifetime budgets as well, especially when you're starting. Now, we don't need to dive into advanced options now, but really quickly, all this is about telling you when you're charged. You know, how is the charge going to display in your ads manager? A simple example would be if you're running video views, you could choose to be charged for through plays, which is a 15-second continuous view, as opposed to a 3-second continuous view. We're going to be charged with this campaign based on impressions, and we can also decide if we want to accelerate our spending. So what this means is, let's say we have a £10 a day budget. It's going to try and spread that £10 out across that 24-hour period. We might not want that. We might choose accelerated, in which case that's just basically going to spend that £10 as quick as it possibly can, put it in front of as many faces, and then it will just cap out and it will wait until that next day before getting refreshed. So that's our ad set. It's essentially our audience, our placement, and our budget. And just before we move on, we might now want to name this, because we might want to say, well, this is London and it was an 80-kilometer radius, and this was men and women, and what did we say? This was 18 to 45. This is what I mean about the ad set. You can include those things in here once you've decided, because there you go, just like we thought, we also have interests in dogs. just for example. So moving on now to the advert. So if I take my phone here and I record a little bit of video saying, hello, this is an advert, I'm going to use that as my content just to show you exactly how this works. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to call this test advert. And I'm going to choose the Facebook pages that are associated with my business. I'm going to choose my Facebook page and I'm going to choose my Instagram page. And now I can choose between two main options. Firstly, mockups are just template adverts. We won't have any at this stage. So we can either create an ad or we can use an existing post. If I want to use an existing post, I can just choose a previous post that I've just made on my Facebook or Instagram page, and I can choose to boost that. It's that simple. If I'm using an existing post, this is a post that's actually posted to my page and it exists out there on my profile. And now I'm going to start putting money to spend and boost that in front of new people. If I create an ad, that's not the case. This is a brand new post that won't exist on my profile. This is sometimes referred to as a dark post or a blind post because you can't find it by looking on someone's profile. It just appears as a standalone ad. So if I want to go and create an ad, we've gone through the dynamic posts and how that works. It's going to chop and change the different creative. I'm going to choose to use a single image or video, but I could choose a carousel, which is where I'm going to put multiple bits of content where people can swipe through as they're browsing. Or I might want to use a collection, which is kind of similar, but it just shows like a kind of montage of different bits of content within one post. So if I choose a single image or video, I do have the option to add something called an instant experience. What this does is it means that if someone clicks on the ad, it's going to overtake the whole screen of that device and it's going to be a bit more of an immersive experience. Now, I do recommend you play around with this because it's quite a cool feature, but I'm going to skip past it for now and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose my content. If you go to add media, for this example, I'm going to add a video and I'm going to click here to upload the video that I just recorded. Now going to downloads, here's my video, and you're going to see that populate as a preview in this area here. Now that's going to take a little bit of time to render in, but once the video populates, you're going to see it as an example preview here. So let's just see what that looks like. So there you go. And that's my test advert. You do have the option to come here and crop this. You can change the aspect ratio. For example, we might want this as 1:1 because we want this to be applicable for Facebook feeds as well as Facebook stories. So you have some automatic crop functionality, which basically means that you can leave this as a portrait, but when it comes to displaying in the Instagram feed, it will automatically crop 1:1. It's handy, but do make sure to check your previews to make sure it hasn't done anything funky. But you can come in here and add subtitles and you can put polls in and you can overlay text. You can put your logo in. And so this little editor is quite handy. I'm just going to go and apply that edit and I'm going to go ahead and save that. So you can see that my new little preview here is now a square crop, which is great. And here in the primary text is where you can put your advert's main message. And as you edit this, you're going to see your advert change in real time. And we're going to put a headline in here which says, I'd like you to visit my website. And this is a description of what my website does. So all of these different sections are going to appear in your preview. And you can refresh this and you might notice that things like the description and the headline might only appear in certain placements. So this is an example of the desktop news feed. This is really important because you've got to make sure that any vital information about your ad always sits in the primary text, because you can go through and check the different placements of how your advert looks. And you're going to notice that where some do have these headline and description placements, others don't. So do go through to preview exactly how your advert is showing and do notice the placements where your advert can't be shown. For example, here, this is saying to deliver to desktop right column, you must change the media because the desktop right column doesn't show videos. So this is where you can see all the previews for your Instagram feed, your stories, your audience network for people using apps, There's lots to check out to make sure that your advert is showing properly. And of course, you want to put the URL for your traffic campaign here, which is going to make a button that people can click and actually go to your website in this example. So here we can put in a display link that relates to your company. And this is just going to show in some placements as a display link here, just as you can see. If I just highlight that, that's where the display link looks. The call to action is your CTA button, your call to action button, and you can choose different ones. At the moment, you can see it says learn more. Maybe I am a restaurant advertising a place on my website to book a table. I might want to choose different call to actions. And then, of course, importantly, if you want to change the color in the background of your stories, you can do that here. Let's just have a look at exactly what this does. You're going to notice that in stories, I might want to have my background as black. I might want to have it as red. If you do have branding codes for your company, you can put a hex code in here and just make sure that the color is fitting your branding perfectly. And there you go. If you are featuring a brand or a product from a different company and you're advertising on their behalf, it is important that you check this. For most of you watching, you're going to be advertising your own product, so you can ignore it. But if you are dealing with other brands, do make sure you put your partners in this section here. We can make these adverts in multiple different languages. If I want this advert to show in Spain, I could go ahead and translate my copy. So when this advert shows in Spain, it's in Spanish, and the same for anywhere in the world, and you can put your own translations in place. So that's a handy tool. I'm sure that most people watching this wouldn't necessarily need to use it, but it's important you know that tool's there. Now, rounding up the ad creation, this is where you want to either turn your pixel on or off. We're going to be talking about pixels later in this series, but we always want to have our pixel on. And this is where we want to turn them on or off. We're going to show you how to make and install pixels later. But that brings us round to creating our first advert. Now, if I confirm that, what you're going to see is you're going to see this advert populate in Ads Manager. And it looks a little something like this. There you go. This little arrow is just going to show you that it's rendering the ad. It's just making sure that it's connecting all the dots and getting it working. Once you make an advert, it's got to be approved by Facebook to make sure there's no explicit content and to make sure that you're in general being a good marketer and abiding by the guidelines, because you want to make sure that you're putting a good message that has high quality out there. You don't want to be using explicit language and a lot of that stuff that's against Facebook's terms and conditions. So we're looking at the campaign, and now we can look at the ad set, which is our 80 kilometers, male and female, with interested in dogs. And we can also go to the ad level. Now, if you just go and click edit here, one thing that's quite handy is you can click this little arrow and you can start to see exactly what your adverts look like in situ. You can actually see how they will show up on a Facebook page, and here you go. So this is our ad copy, this is the content, we can see our call to action, and very importantly, as this is put in front of people, we're going to start to see how people engage. We're going to see comments and we're going to see likes coming in. And in my opinion, it's very important to be doing this often, because you're going to want to see what those comments and what those reactions are. And you're going to want to go and engage with this audience. You're going to want to reply to questions, and you're going to want to build genuine conversations around your product and around your brand. And that's where you do it. So there you go. That is how to actually make an ad. And whether you are looking at traffic or reach or video views, the process of making an advert and making an audience is pretty much identical. It's worth noting that you can make a certain objective in an existing campaign. And what I mean by that is, if I have lots of different video adverts, I don't have to make a video views campaign for every single one. I can build a new audience or a new ad set under an existing campaign. And that's an important way of not layering up a billion campaigns that are fundamentally doing the same objective. So there we go. That's the mechanics of how to actually make an advert. I hope that video has helped, and I will see you in the next lesson.